It's good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third webinar for 2025. So we'll just give it 1 minute. We've just got a few people joining, so just give it a minute for a few others. And then we've got quite a lot of stuff to race through, including some live demos and some key points from the conference. Okay, so we might make a start. So today's webinar is a recap of the New Zealand Digital Workplace Conference as seen by Rich and myself. Mel's going to be moderating questions. So if you've got any questions, just pop those into the chat and we'll try and answer those as we go through. We'll have time at the end for questions as well. And we're aiming to sort of get through the main content in sort of 30-ish minutes, but Rich has got an awesome demo, so it might be a few minutes longer than that. So hopefully that's all okay with everyone. So thank you very much for joining us today. We will jump right into it. So the New Zealand Digital Workplace Conference is held usually in March. This year there was 30 speakers. That's them in their full glory in the photo there, speaking on a variety of topics. This originally was a SharePoint conference. It's now much broader: Microsoft 365, Power Platform, AI, and case studies from interesting organizations that are talking about what they've done and how they got there on their journey, which is always interesting. So the key themes that came from the conference this year, the keynote, there were 3 keynote speakers. So the first sort of major theme was around the emphasis on managing your digital footprint in your organization. So we're still doing lots of migrations where we find content that's 20 or 30 plus years old sitting on file servers. Put some management around that content and looking after it is good for lots of things, as you'll see as we're going through today. And intentional management is the key. So not just doing it by accident, actually being intentional about the process. The second part of the keynote was really around AI. Lauren Nobbs from Microsoft spoke about the future of AI-driven agents. So Rich is going to do a little bit of a demo of some agent things. We'll talk a wee bit about that maybe today. He's shaking his head. But really the idea of an agent is that it's using AI to do those sort of everyday tasks that you might need help with. So where you could do with a bit of an assistant. And the key thing is that they can be sometimes with the person in the loop and sometimes the person not in the loop. So for example, when an inquiry comes in, do something, or if somebody completes a form, do some actions from that form, and can be to build into your workflow as you do it. Those are kind of simple scenarios. In SharePoint, we can do sort of knowledge-based agents as well. And that really brings us to the third part of the keynote, which was, I think, the bit that resonated with me the most, which was this is around the digital skills gap that's been developed or that's arising in organizations again. So with the rise of AI, we're starting to see groups of people that are taking to the tools and getting advantage of them, and other people that are a little bit left behind, or they're not quite up with it yet, or they haven't made the change to take advantage of those tools. And one of the really interesting things about Brett's talk really was around how in the building trade we train people on using things like circular saws. But in the IT or digital space, we don't teach people how to use Excel properly or how to use Teams to run meetings efficiently, or use the AI tools to save yourself a lot of time around things. So they were kind of the 3 key themes that came from the keynote. I think probably the area that was of most interest to me was around adoption and innovation. So there are a lot of talks at the conference around using AI to do various things. But it came down to like sort of these 4 sort of key points. One is that many organizations these days at this point are just piloting AI technology. No one is really embracing it to broadly and in depth across their organizations. We're all in the pilot stage. The technology is developing, and so are the things that we can do with it. And there's been big announcement from Microsoft just last week on the wave 2 of Copilot, which has lots of improvements around how we can search for content, interact with agents, and so on. Second one was really around integrating and optimizing your AI into your business process and optimizing processes. So sometimes we have processes where there are things that we do in that process where AI could help us a lot. So everything from recruitment, reviewing CVs, even things like creating a LinkedIn post for your marketing team from a document. Mel's laughing because that's what she does. So making sure you're starting to integrate AI into your business processes is kind of a key stepping stone. Bringing AI into your workflows. So we've got automation now. We've got the ability to bring AI in some cases. It's not always the right tool for the job though. So you need to be really think about when you use AI versus when it's just a process that you need for it. And probably the most important thing is being deliberate about what you're doing when you're implementing AI. Don't just turn it on for the sake of turning it on, but actually have a purpose that you're turning it on for, and then you'll have more success because you'll be more focused on what you're doing. And all of those things together mean that really in organizations, what we're going to be facing over the next wee while is a lot of change. And so more than ever, change management is going to be an essential skill for leaders in organizations. And what we often see is leaders who are less comfortable with change management or understanding the new technologies and the change required to take advantage of them. But the word is out. People are doing this stuff. As leaders, we need to be leading the change within the organizations as well. So I'll hand over to Rich now. He's going to talk on some Power Platform things. So take it away, Rich.
Cool. I think I've turned my audio on, but Steve left this thing on. That's okay. Cool. No, me too. All good. No background noise now. Great. Cool. So I'm Rich. I do Stratos. This is my first webinar, so I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to talk a bit about Power Platform, Plan Designer, talk more about Copilot and some of the awareness that I think everybody needs to get to, so they can talk coherently to people within the business and to consultancies and other people around what they're trying to do, what they want for an agent, and then a little bit about agent sprawl and some takeaways. So when I attended, I went to the conference and did most of the Power Platform tracks. I spoke to a few different people around there. So do I say next slide when we go? Is that what we do? Yeah, great. Next slide, please. Okay, and so what I'm going to talk about first, I did a presentation on Plan Designer, which is a new thing in the Power Platform, and I will share my screen and take over for a second. We'll just go straight to the screen. Great, cool. And so if you're using the new Plan or the new Power Platform and you turn on the new experience, then you'll get the ability to have this rather than the regular create apps. But if you're in apps as well, you'll notice there are some new things that are showing up around apps as well. That you can add in and more things around Copilot, how to add that to your workflows and to our current apps you have. But I'll show you Plan Designer in a very quick walkthrough. But generally what we're trying to do here is Microsoft's pushing more and more intelligent apps, and the way to make intelligent apps right now within this preview of Plan Designer is around, it's going to build an app based on your use case. So rather than having to sort of sit back and figure out what you're doing, you can just type in to your UI here, the description you want. I'm going to cheat. You can upload files, but let's just say let's take an out of the box one. So it's taking the Copilot information. I want to need my staff to check out equipment and be notified of due dates, right? So a simple use case, click that. That's going to then go and analyze the information that I put into the plan there, and it comes up with a business problem. That's what I put in, and it then tries to work out the purpose of this. So this is Copilot in action working along within my Power Platform world, and it's trying to determine who's involved, who's the administrator. You can what the UI in here, you just need to know that you got to scroll down a little bit to find that there's no buttons yet. So there's going to be some changes that are going to happen, but we can see on the right hand side things that are updating. It knows there's a couple of users involved in terms of roles, and if I say add these roles, then it goes on to the next process where it says, oh yep, based on these roles, we think you need to have these tables in Dataverse. So it is Dataverse based, and so if you're not on board with Dataverse yet, should probably start thinking about that, because the future of building Power Apps will have a strong Dataverse component in terms of getting started quicker. You can still use all the other data sources, but it's just that Microsoft will not be making it as easy to build apps in those worlds that it is in the Dataverse world. So think about the benefits you'll get from rapid deployment. So then based on that, we can see, I can scroll up here. We've got a bunch of tables built. And then each information has basically more information about it. I'm really flying through. So if you want a longer demo of this, I'm happy to do that and step through in more advanced terms. I know we've just got like a few minutes to show this, so it's just whiz bang, and there is a few steps to go through. And again, the data agent said, hey, I've generated these models for you. Want to use them? Yep. Or you can edit and say, actually, I don't need the administrator table, that sort of stuff. I can just carry on. But I'm just going to say add, because I know that demo will work. If I start taking things out, it might not, but you never know. Let's zoom out a little bit. And so on the right-hand side, it's building out some user experiences for me. And you can see now it's building out apps for me. So it's just based on my scenario, I need a regular app to request the checkout. And I also need an admin app to like manage the equipment, and then maybe some workflows. And what's happening when I presented this at the conference, the flows weren't available to auto-generate. So we'll just see on this demo if they actually are. That should be quite cool if they are. But you can see it's going to build out all these items for me. So let's use these experiences. And you can see information here about what they are. And I don't think it's going to do these yet. Yep. Can't come yet. So can't build the flows yet. So I'm really excited to see when that actually happens, how it will build the flows, because Copilot building flows right now isn't great. More like a template selector. So I'll be really interested to see what's happening in that space. So I've accepted all the items, and then what happens then is I can click over here, or there's a bit of a UI sort of issue at the moment where if I click create, it's going to tell me to do some stuff. So I still need to save all the tables, and that can take a bit of time, right? So let's call it that. If there are any questions for this while we're waiting for that to happen, just put them in the chat, and Mel will let me know. But hopefully there are. No question, because it's so amazing. So we save the tables, and then I can click create on my app, right? So that should be getting created. Let's see, or we might still be waiting for the tables to save. Still waiting down the bottom there. But then it will build out my model-driven app. So if I'm not using model-driven apps in the Power Platform space right now, I should be thinking about using them as well for the future. But also Canvas apps, and then you don't necessarily have to have a model-driven app. You don't have to create it. But when you create these ones, then they will build. I think we're still saving. Just going to check here. The other good thing about what this does is it builds a solution for me with all the information in it. So if I go back out of this, this will still keep running as we're doing it. Go into solutions. Let's do it as a new tab just so we can keep it running. And that was had an _1 at the end of it. So the one I just made a minute ago, but it's already got that built in terms of my solutions, and it's building out the full solution infrastructure. So again, if I am in the Power Platform space as a maker today and I'm not really using solutions, I should be seriously considering using solutions to make sure all my data is kept in a nice little container so I keep hold of it and move it around different environments. So we can see at the moment there's only one plan in here, but it's got lots of different variables and tables that it's put together. So there's the tables, it's got some artifacts in there we can look at. Can't change them yet. The plan is also in there, and I can jump back into it and make changes to it. And as soon as I go back into where I was at, I'll be able to create those tables again. No, we'll go into the solution and open the plan there. And that should basically pick us up from where we left off. So you can come back into this and re-edit this as well as if you want to over time. Let's see if this is actually saved now. And the tables are published. We've got green on there, which is great. Let's see if we can make an app now. Yes, we can. So that's going to build out the app. And as that's being built in my solution, it's already being added to that solution by default. And then key thing here again, all the apps that are going to will be in Canvas apps will be the responsive, modern type look of the Canvas app. So if you're, again, still building up your skills about building inside containers and responsive design, then it's a really good area for you to focus on in terms of updating skills. Let's close that out there so we can see it. But it'll be the standard blue look, and then away we go. Still loading. This is the joy of live demos, but there it is. So we've got, if you watch the Ignite or the Build conferences, they had a similar kind of approach where you've got your more modern Power Apps that have like a landing page of other apps within them that you can get to, so different screens and views, without much of a way to navigate back to where you were before. But that's something that Microsoft will be working on, but then we're back into that. Okay, so it's going to build that out, and I can build a model-driven app, but I can't build my workflows yet. So the main thing to understand is it's going to be Dataverse based. It's going to try and work out your questions. You don't necessarily need to have massive design skills yet in terms of your Power Apps, but you have to have more skills around defining your business case about what you need and then editing that process. So more work is needed potentially up front to understand what you're trying to achieve and build using this method, than actually getting straight into the app and building it out and then testing it out. So once you've got it with the users, then you can do more, and you can come back in here and make more changes. So we can make little tweaks and do different things if we want to. That can work through, and we can build those apps out as we go. All right, that was really, really fast. I understand that. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the slide deck to talk about other elements of the conference that I thought was going to be useful. So Plan Designer for Power Apps. And then the other thing, I went to Cameron Dwyer's presentation on Copilot. There were lots of Copilot presentations. Cameron's was particularly good for me, just because he broke down a lot of how agents work, and that got me thinking about what are the type of skills that people need to be able to understand when they're talking to other people about building out agents. So if we look at this screen, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before, but Cam showed this one. On the left-hand side, you've got your how an agent actually works. So you are at the top, user experience, then it's going to go on for the thing called Microsoft Orchestrator. If you didn't know that, that's the engine that grabs all the information and checks all the safety of what's happening. And then you've got knowledge and skills. So if you're not using knowledge and skills today in terms of what's in your Copilots, then it's time to start adjusting the vocabulary, because as you ask people to build you apps and agents, they're going to ask you what knowledge does it need and what skills do you want. So knowledge is kind of like the data sources, where the information is going. So I've got a screen that talks about this in a second. And skills are the things that the agent can do. So knowledge is like the repositories, and skills are what it does. And then on the right-hand side, you can see how you got your large language model down the bottom. And then that's basically how we started off. And then Copilot sits around that, Microsoft Copilot, and it gives you something towards some skills and some knowledge. And then this area towards the right and the upper area is where you can play with Copilot agents using Copilot Studio to extend what you need to do across your tenant in terms of apps and agents. Again, I'm flying through this really quickly. We go next slide. Cool. So there's going to be lots of questions about this, but I've tried to put a few slides together in terms of sort of building a level set of how Copilot agents and Studio should be used. So the main thing to understand, first of all, is not all Copilots are the same. So if you're ever having a discussion with anyone about a Copilot, try and understand which Copilot you're talking about, because I build Copilots in the Copilot Studio, but you may be using Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is an out-of-the-box agent straight away built for you with some defined use cases. So when we start talking about your problems with your agent, it's kind of understanding which agent you're using, so then we can work out what it is and try and resolve that. So key thing there, understand the types and then the use cases. So knowledge and skills, key things to know. So knowledge is information and answering queries, good for unstructured data. Skills are more around giving an agent a task, or taking an action, going and doing something, telling someone something. So that's a key thing to understand. Like, it's still like Power Automate with triggers and actions, but it's now knowledge and skills. Another key takeaway I got from the conference was Copilot, when it's used, well, all Copilots will index the data that they go to for their knowledge over time. So if you're working in a rapidly changing world and you want to get live updates using an agent, then you might need to really think about how you're going to build that agent to get that data, because out of the box, it's not going to be real time in terms of the data you get back. So it's perfect for SharePoint and looking at documents. But if you want your real-time line of business stuff, then building an agent via Copilot Studio with an API will probably be more appropriate than, say, using a graph connector to get to it. So if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And the other thing I took away from the conference is that there are many types of agents in Copilot within Microsoft. So put a little slide together, happy to share it out there. You've got your declarative, generative, hybrid, task, and reasoning agents, right? So from the left, you've got your declarative as a rule-based thing where it's going to basically understand what you're trying to do, and it's like more like a chatbot to reset your password. So a defined use case, not quite tasks, but you can ask it to do something and it will know what you've asked and do it. A generative one is more like your ChatGPT on your phone, where it's going to go off and look at the web or look at documents and bring back information that based on your queries, so more open and more kind of unstructured. A hybrid combines them both. So let's look at some stuff over here and then take some tasks. So there's a meeting with all this stuff in it, and then let's define some tasks to go and after the meeting to assign people to do some work. Task orientated is again more focused, and that's more like calling Power Automate and flows and different APIs or external services to get what you need to happen, right? So it's very, it's sort of more doing stuff and actually taking action than just talking to you as an agent. So yeah, like a room booking system that checks scheduling before it makes the suggestions, and then you pick one. And then the reasoning one is where Microsoft is wanting us, everybody to head towards, where you've got meta agents deciding which agent to use or activate or skill to activate based on your query, right? So the kind of the utopia of like AI running everything. Not too many of those around at the moment, but if you imagine, they call them hives or agent groups or whatever the term is for lots of agents and one agent sitting above many others to figure out what you want to do. But if you think about an onboarding process that maybe has different agents that are needed for different teams, and then that agent working out what needs to be done and then activating agents at the appropriate time to take actions. So just a quick slide there. If we skip through the next thing for awareness in terms of Copilot, understanding the types of connectors you can use. So you've got graph connectors, Power Platform connectors, and API connectors. Super important to understand how each works in terms of what you're trying to achieve with your agent that you're trying to build. So graph connectors, if you think about answering questions on unstructured data, Power Platform connectors, think about low code and specific kind of use case tasks. So I want to update this record here or post a message in the Teams. That's when you'll be using those. And API connectors more around getting data from other line of business systems that may sit outside of Microsoft 365 or your tenant, and querying that data and taking actions based on that. So combining that down. So those are the little slides. I'm happy to share that afterwards as well. So if we skip to the next one, quick chat about sprawl. That's going to be a thing like team sprawl, Yammer sprawl when that was back in the day. But if you think Microsoft wants to move all companies towards a multi-agent orchestration world, which is all the reasoning agents taking lots of actions, so there's going to be more agents and more agents running other agents, need to keep a handle on that, right? So to do that, can't just jump in, like Steve was just saying, can't just jump in and turn things on and away it goes, because as we've seen already, people just turning on Copilot, that's exposing all your Microsoft 365 data, and you may have data on there that you don't want the agents to find, or that shouldn't be there, or it's out of date. So first up, clean up your data sources, make sure you've got that good, build out use cases for the agents, show the value on those agents and build the trust, and then the cost benefit, because it will cost you in terms of licensing to get agents, but they will benefit you beyond your licensing costs. Is the idea. And if they're not, then come up with different use cases. And then obviously have your agent governance in place. If you need help with that, happy to help you there. And also use the Copilot Admin Center in the Power Platform section to track what agents are being built, what they're being used for, and then how much of your governance is supporting how those agents are being looked after. Super quick one on sprawl, but yeah, it will be a thing to stay ahead of it. So my takeaways, Power Apps, again, responsive designs, using solutions, thinking Dataverse is where Microsoft is pushing everything, and it's been around for a while, but it's growing more and more in terms of how it's being used. Power Automate, in Power Automate, using the actual AI Builder actions, if you want to do more AI, is a really important area to understand what you can do with AI Builder in Power Automate, but also being aware of the Automation Center that's kind of replacing the Power Automate kind of activity area where you used to be able to see what flows ran. This area can give you a place where you can see all flows that you've got access to and then see them in a grid of what's happening. And you can use Copilot in that area to query what's happening with your workflows. Agents, I'd recommend everybody to make sure that they're getting a handle on what the terms and types of agents are that are out there. So use those slides I put out earlier to get that base level of information so you can talk to lots of people about what you need to do. And then obviously governance across not just agents, but across your Power Platform, across your SharePoint, everything. You need to know, kind of have a journey of where you're trying to get to, have that in place, and then clean up your data before you turn everything on, please. That's my takeaway. So super fast, flew through it. Over to Steve.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. Whoops, we're getting an echo. It's not just me. He thought he had that sorted. So if anybody is excellent at doing switchovers when you're in the same room, then we could do with some training, some opportunity for you. So okay, so obviously, like Rich is like very passionate about Power Platform, and then I'm very passionate about SharePoint. So I thought I'd just cover off a few things. One of the things from my own talk that I covered off was how to use SharePoint Premium features to automate a few common sorts of tasks. So we did a demo. The demo will, I won't run that today because it does take a few minutes for it to run. But the example that I gave was being able to upload invoices into a document library and then extract values out of that invoice, such as who the supplier was, what the values, like how much the invoice was for, what GST was on the invoice, what the date is, the due dates, any key sort of date information. And then because it's in SharePoint, then you can run workflow to or use filtering and so on to group the items together. And one of the key things I demonstrated was that when you're doing this, the data that you get back is not always what you'd expect. So for example, if I put an Australian invoice in, which doesn't have GST, then it's not going to pull through the GST value into the through the document processor. Which is kind of a key thing. So when you're building processes around that, really thinking about what data it is that I'm expecting and what the edge cases might be. One of the other built-in models that we get with SharePoint Premium is around the ability to find sensitive information. So you can have it, for example, scan through a document library looking for driver's licenses, as an example. Another thing that we were able to demonstrate through that process is that you can also use it for quick processes where you might be looking for sensitive information across a large amount of content, and where the value is high. So you might want to use this because there is a cost per document that you're processing. You wouldn't use it on millions of documents, but you might use it on an area where you think there might be some sensitive things in here that I need to find before so we can do something about that and remediate. I also demonstrated the e-signature functionality. So if you've used DocuSign or Adobe Signatures, you can now use simple signatures within SharePoint Premium, and they are about a third of the cost of Microsoft's, of Adobe or DocuSign, but they do have some limitations. But they're good for internal sign-off required, and you get it generates a sign-off block on a document that you can inject signatures into. And then we finished off with a bit on archiving and backup, which are two of the new features of SharePoint Premium. So the reason these are important, one is the archiving allows you to move unused or sites that you want to retain, but they're taking up space, move them off onto cheaper storage. So if you're buying additional storage capacity, that's definitely the tool for you. It keeps the site intact and adheres to permissions and also to any retention rules that you have on that content as well. And then backup, which is a new Microsoft 365 backup, allows us to back up not just SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and Exchange content as well, and get it back through a simple UI online. It's not as sophisticated as like a dedicated backup solution like Veeam or the AvePoint backup products, but it is a good solution if you haven't got anything there and you want to protect yourself and give yourself the ability to recover quickly in some scenarios. Probably my favorite talk that I went to, other than Rich's one, of course, was one on Purview by Jen Jones from Datacom. So Jen's a real expert in the Purview space, and she talked about how the Death Star may not have been destroyed if the rebels hadn't been able to get hold of the plans. And in her example, she was showing the different functionality within Purview that you could use to firstly locate sensitive information, then tag it as sensitive, and then protect it by adding policies to that content so that it can't be used in an unintended way or leak out of the organization. And it was very much a case study running through the different features. So the key things, key functional parts of Purview that Jen covered off were the sensitivity labels, data loss prevention, lifecycle management of content, so managing old content. So do you need to retain that content, which is also kind of an important consideration for Copilot. And then finally, reporting. And Purview itself has sensitive content reporting and so on, which can help you identify areas that need to be remediated before you enable or let loose AI on your content, which is one of the big questions that everybody's asking these days is it safe to turn on Copilot if it can see my stuff? So my key takeaways from the conference, first one is that investing in digital skills is the key to unlocking productivity. And so why don't we do more of it? If I drill into that a little bit more, we sort of stopped. The key message from that particular talk was that we stopped really doing digital skills development around about the year 2000. Before then, we tended to do quite a bit. After then, we've done very little. So now it's an assumption that people know how to use things. But in my experience working with lots of organizations, people don't understand where to save things. They don't know which tool to use when, and they don't know what the rules are or the guidelines that they should be working in. If any of those things are true, then there's an opportunity to improve, and investing in skills development, whether it's internal training, your onboarding process and ongoing skills development. There's lots of free resources out there, as well as excellent training organizations that can help. So yeah, if you've got skills issues in your organization, which I'm sure you will have, then it's really a good idea to invest in those. The second one was an interesting fact. 83% of people prefer video for instructional content, but most of us don't feel confident creating video content. That's from Daryl Webster. I really like Daryl. He's a change manager and super trainer, and he knows a lot about this. And he's also an excellent video content creator, which is probably why he put this in his slides. But the key thing here is that he was demonstrating how to use Clipchamp, which is part of Microsoft 365, to create engaging training videos and do basic editing and so on. So if you haven't used Clipchamp and you've got some training requirements, just go and have a play with it. Spend half an hour. Create some little videos and see how you go. It's actually very easy, and you can make really nice company branded video content easily. It's not last, but it was definitely one of the more entertaining sessions. Was Debbie Ireland, and was put on the spot, I think, by one of her team, Shannon, who talked about the SharePoint Brand Center, but did it in the theme of the theme of Phantom of the Opera. And really what it was about was like unlifting the mask off SharePoint and making it look more beautiful using the Brand Center. So if you haven't seen the Brand Center, we've actually got a video from our first webinar where I did talk a wee bit about it. It allows you to add custom fonts, custom templates, documents, brand assets, and theme colors to your SharePoint environment. And it's easily end user. It doesn't require a developer to do that work. So, and you can create multiple brand sets for your organization for different parts of the organization. So if you're not doing that, have a look and maybe just go to our YouTube. I think Mel's going to share the link with that, and it'll have a demo of how to actually use it. It's very cool. And I think probably the number one takeaway, so definitely left the best for last, was that good information architecture is essential for AI. So if you're lifting and shifting lots of content into SharePoint, and you are then thinking, I might want to use AI with that later, then it's easiest if you make the decisions about how you're designing that at the start, rather than try and change it after the fact. The presentation from Jen on Purview is definitely focused on existing content. So we've moved things over without having the architecture around the content and the permissions set up correctly, tagging and organizing our content. So we need to remediate it. If we do that piece at the start, the work to do that is less, and we'll get a better result from AI tools when we're using them, because things like SharePoint agents will connect directly to a SharePoint library or folder. If you're building a Copilot agent through Copilot Studio, then again, it's only going to be as good as the content that it has to work with. So invest your time in your information architecture up front. Get that bit right before you move your content in, and you'll be better positioned to manage or implement those other tools in the future. Not to mention, you'll feel more comfortable when you do turn them on. So we've got a few minutes for questions. And has anybody got anything? Well, is there any questions in there?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so if you do have a question, pop it in the chat now. If you don't have a question now, but would like to learn a little bit more about some of the things we've shown today, if you just contact Mel and she can arrange a wee demo with either Rich or myself on some of those things. We also didn't cover everything from the conference because it's huge. There was 30 speakers, and we were sort of trying to get the areas that we were most interested in. But if there are areas that from the conference agenda that you saw and you thought, oh, I'd like to know more about that, also let us know, and we might be able to connect you up with the right people for that also. So thanks very much for attending. We've got 2 upcoming webinars in May and June. The next one is Campaigns, Content and Engagement, which is going to be around using SharePoint and Microsoft 365 tools for running campaigns inside your organization and helping to create engaging comms. And that will be presented jointly by Stratus and Power Software, so who produce Power Intranet and some other tools. And then on the 25th of June, we've got the Age of Agents. And that's going to be more of a deeper dive into how we use agents or how to create agents in Copilot Studio. And Rich will be presenting that one. So he'll be working hard to make sure that one's a cool demo between now and then. And if you've got any ideas, I'm sure he'll be happy to perhaps listen to those and decide whether he wants to use them as part of his demo. So, okay. So thank you very much. If there's no questions, Rich and I can stick around for 2 or 3 minutes if you do have a question. Otherwise, we will end the webinar.